Welcome to Building Health Solutions, the podcast where we geek out on the growing nutrition, health, and wellness businesses. I'm your host, Victor Chapela, a lifelong entrepreneur and the chief geek. If this is your first time tuning in, let me tell you a little bit about what we do here. We explore everything from industry-wide incentive structures to the psychology of the entrepreneur. We have incredible guests, as you can see here today with us, and that will tell us a little bit about the hard-won lessons and counterintuitive insights. It's quite a ride. So having said that, I'm here with John Holwick and with Maru Cho, which work with me at Suggestic and building what is our growth engine. So basically, we've been working over the past year or so with John and building, actually less, like more like 7 or 8 months, building the initial framework of our growth engine. And then with Maru, we're growing that into the future and we're planning for that. So we will tell you a little bit about how to build a predictable growth engine for sales. So John helped us take it from less than $1 million in ARR to over 2 million, and we will close the year around 3 million. And then Maru will take it from there and build it up to 10 million next year. And the idea of this podcast is, how are we thinking about it? What we've done so far and what we will be doing. So let's start with you, John, and tell us like when you came in and how we were transitioning from founder-led deals where I was kind of working close hand in hand with Matt, our main and most successful and only salesperson, into more of a process and how that worked.
Yeah, sure. And I'll start back even a little further than that, in that it was about 2 years ago that I invested in Suggestic, because I really feel like there's no one way to be healthy, but in order for anyone to be healthy, you have to have an effective program driven by data that's personalized for you, and then convenient and easy to follow for the consumer. And I recognized right away that Suggestic had a wonderful platform for that. So I invested it a couple of years ago, and through the first kind of year or so, I got to know the sales process. And the sales process, and I'll use kind of quotes for that, because it's funny to look back now, the sales process was a lot of heroics and personal talent from Victor and Shai, the other founder, and Matt, who's a wonderfully talented salesperson. And the company was doing a great job of closing good customers and getting it done with just extra effort and extra heart and a lot of really long nights. And they were able to get deals done. So it was kind of this period of founder-led sales, which was just driven by some incredible human beings. So Victor then asked me earlier in this year, in 2022, to help us become a little bit more consistent and predictable and process oriented. And those things just happen to be some of my favorite concepts in all of life. My background is in finance and very analytical spreadsheet work. So my mind is just one big spreadsheet. My tech background is from Salesforce and other AI and data-driven products that help you to just be more effective using data and having a better process. So I was happy to get involved and help with that. And I would say there were a few really important keys to what we did. Number one, we didn't have a fully implemented CRM. We had just made a transition from HubSpot to Salesforce, as a lot of companies are Suggestic size will do. HubSpot does a great job out of the box and is very popular for early stage startups to just get up and running and have something that tracks your deals in your customer conversations. And then after a while, you may outgrow it, and Salesforce becomes a lot more appropriate. So the company Suggestic had just made the transition to Salesforce.
We hadn't completely made the transition,
but
we had acquired Salesforce, which was
right. But to Victor's point, there were something like 4,000 open opportunities, and really only about 30 or 40 of those were real. So, the first thing that we did was we implemented Salesforce, and we had a good system of record for all of our conversations, and a good way to track who we were going after. That part was really important. The other part, and I think a lot of companies miss this when they're implementing a CRM or figuring out a process, you really have to get your stages correct and decided on upfront and intentionally. So we found a group called Winning by Design. Winning by Design has published several books and created a very good process, which I feel reflects the tech or SaaS methodology really well. So we adopted their methodology, followed it almost to a T, and then implemented Salesforce around that methodology. So we have some very important key stages, which all focus around conversions. So we measure, and Victor will go through this in a little bit, what evolved out of it is a very effective high-level CEO dashboard that shows all of these conversions week to week, month to month, and allows us to immediately notice if something's going wrong so that we can jump in and correct it.
And run experiments on top of it.
Great point. Yeah, we can see and compare different time frames to see when we try something new if it's working or not. So those parts were extremely important, and I think once we agreed on those stages, once we had it implemented, once we had a way to report on it, then we were able to really inspect our process and find ways to improve. So that part was really important for process, and then I think the last aspect that I think we got right, because over the last 6 or 7 months we've been able to double our revenue, or even a little bit more, and I attribute all of it to consistency amongst the team. We all agree on what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what comes next. Every customer we work with, and I think it's also about being able to clearly see where the coaching comes into play as well. If there's a weakness that we have in conversations, we record all of our calls, and we have a tool called Gong, which allows us to see the transcript, see certain terms that we define to understand if we're talking about the right things, to reflect those stages and move the deal along the way that we want to. And we're able to look back, we're able to do that with the sales rep, and then identify how to change and how to improve and iterate on even our conversations as well through coaching.
Yeah. No. And actually, the interesting thing about how we've structured this is out of Winning by Design, we had to tweak it to our own kind of stages, because we realized that. So basically, you're measuring conversion rates from people landing in your website that are brought in through either paid marketing or through, which is basically in our case Google Ads, and then we also have people who find us over the internet through content that we're publishing or other things, and we started recently, like in the next 4 or 5 months, doing outbound, which is actually reaching out through LinkedIn or email and figuring out if we can meet with people that are interested in what we have to offer. And all of those channels generate leads. and so the first thing is does each of those different channels that we have, including like trade shows and conferences, how do they generate leads? What are the conversion rate from all those visitors or interactions into leads? And then how many of those leads then they go into the SDR process, which is like measuring how are they qualified or not. And so they're qualified, a percentage of those get qualified. So that's our conversion rate 2. And then from that conversion rate, is it our conversion rate?
Yeah.
Because we created the conversion rate 0, which was not in the methodology. But well, anyway, we have another conversion rate. And then from this qualified lead, and the next step, we used to have, remember that when we started doing all our next step was accepted lead. And that made sense. And it made sense from the methodology itself. But then they were being qualified so well that every single one that was coming in was being accepted by sales like it's something they could sell.
Right.
But then we had a fall off after that. Well, we were not noticing because there were no sales on the other side, or very little. And then we realized that when we started to measure as the next step, not accepted leads, but remember that we moved it to, let's see how many of these people have actually a proposal. All of a sudden there were like proposals, and then boom, like we stopped having proposals like for 2-3 months, and it was like there was no proposals. And it was because we had implemented a new step in the process where we would send our customers a questionnaire they had to fill in before we could give them a proposal. And so customers were like, or prospects or leads were like, I don't feel all that in. Like I just want my proposal of how much it, and they had an idea of how much it cost, so they would just stop there. And the interesting thing is that once we had a proposal, 40% of them would close. So it was like the most critical thing is give them a proposal, get them there. So what we started doing, and the questionnaire was very good. It was like a not more qualification. It was like actually understanding what they wanted. And this questionnaire, what we started doing, and Matt started doing it actually on his own, and he decided to start filling it in with them on the call. In addition, you had created like this calculator, right?
Yeah.
Like to calculate like return on investment and
how much it would cost versus what, it's a basic build versus buy calculator, because that's one of the key parts of Suggestic's value is to buy something that's already pre-built rather than start from scratch if you're trying to create an app. So we had some calculators there, but I think to add to your point, having the process is what helped us identify that we were creating our own roadblock.
Exactly.
And that's an important tip I would pass along to our listeners, is that you want to approach this with humility, and you want to find the things that are broken. But we never would have known that this part was broken if we couldn't see that
measure it.
Yeah, we call it CR3, conversion rate 3. It just was not converting. It was zero.
And it was when we moved it like one step forward, because it made no sense that conversion rate 3 was 100% everywhere. Like okay, so
Right.
So evidently there's something that is broken between accepted lead and sales. And so we changed that. Matt started filling in those two things online with a customer, and all of a sudden our proposals kind of started flowing in, and the conversions to close deals started flowing in at that same percentage of 40%. Right. So it's kind of like realizing that when you have those metrics now in place, what we've been doing is that was at an end, but at the beginning of the flow and the early conversion rates, we're testing everything, like which we create new landing pages, we create new, we've had different types of campaigns that we work on, and the paid marketing. We create different types of content or we even have webinars or things that change the nature of the people who
Right.
And we test these and see the conversion rates per channel. Then we check the conversion rates per experiment. And that is a weekly cadence. In the early stages, we know not only what the conversion rates, but also the delta time between each part. So we end up understanding like, oh, our enterprise deals take 6 months, or our normal deals take an average 60 days. And so what is it that, where are we in those processes, and what is how many can we close this quarter based on how many are in our pipeline, how far along are they, and what are the probability, not only the probability within the process, but also the probability based on sheer numbers. And it actually, as you go up in numbers, it actually translates very well. We end up finding that, yes, every one of those conversion rates varies slightly week over week, but it doesn't, well, there's one or two that, especially when you get to small numbers, when you're already at the proposal stage, sometimes you have like 3 proposals, sometimes some weeks you have 0. So that does vary. And so that goes from 0 to 100%. So, but most of the early numbers in the funnel stay very stable as we go. And we've been able, for instance, the first conversion rate, which is like the one from people, visitors, into leads, we actually multiply that by 3. So we had like 1.3, 1.5% at the beginning of the year. And we were like 4.5% at some point of people registering to our website. And then we actually rolled back a bit because we were getting too many registrations of people who were not necessarily. So we are very good at getting registrations of people who were not necessarily our customers. So we actually started optimizing we want really people who sign up for meetings and people who actually are qualified after that. So how can we changed the advertising, we made it so that people who were really interested could get into that process. So that's how we got to the sales machine that really has been selling consistently over the last 6 months. I think that's when this kind of like started to take off. Probably even less, probably like 5 months, 4 months, because well, mainly because we have the 60 days. So from when you started, like it started like getting better, but it actually ended up giving results late into that quarter.
Because of the sales cycle. Exactly. You know, changes take time to implement, and anytime that you're re-architecting your process, you've got to build in that lead time so that you're realistic with your expectations.
So that's how we got to where we are. And this group of people, this process basically will take us to the end of year, where we will again grow 50% quarter over quarter, which is what we've been doing so far. And so from $2 million to like $3 million in ARR. But from there on, Mauro joined us recently, and he is already working on implementing the different processes that will actually take us not only from 3 to 9, but probably even our stretch goal is 3 to 15. But how are those processes implemented, and how does it change from where we are today with a small team into this next stage?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the process that you guys have developed have been fantastic, and now it's time to scale it out. And so aside from the processes, it's about the people. So there's, my background is also in SaaS sales, and I've seen a lot of more mature models of, what the sales process can be. But what's exciting about this role is that if I found the process not to be the most efficient, there's not really much I could do about it. But in this role, I can help implement and make those changes, and we can iterate upon the great processes that, that John helped develop, and see what works when you have multiple players in that equation. And so, for example, we have one sales account executive. There's only so much time he has to be able to sell and interact with customers. So I have to find a process that makes sense where we take those sales steps, and different players have a very unique role in that process, and it has to flow very smoothly. And just, based on the idea of the winning by design, it's not about just a sale, but what happens after the sale. So not only am I worried about trying to, build more ARR, I'm also worried about how we're going to deliver on that. So I'm working with the other part of the company to make it into kind of a loop so that we're delivering what we promised in the front end. And then on top of that, we're trying to grow our business with existing customers. So that's been very exciting for me on trying to figure out who are the key players and the timing of it. We obviously can't just hire everybody all at once, but who do we prioritize as being kind of missing a gap inside the process, and then adding that player and then seeing how they bring value to the entire process. And then from there, we can start specializing in different market segments. Right now we do everything, right? We have the white labels, we have the APIs, we have different ways to interact with businesses, but it all goes to one person. We're gonna specialize so that we have different teams dedicated, or what we call pods, so that you have a dedicated account executive, you have a dedicated SDR, dedicated CSM that focuses on those types of clients, because the sales motion you go through for certain types of markets is going to be different than another one. For example, like the way you interact with an enterprise customer is going to be different than much smaller customers, right? And they have their own processes, and you need to have someone that's sensitive and understands what it takes to sell to those types of kind of customers. So that's really what I'm working on now, trying to prioritize the type of people that we have and the type of markets that we're going after, which one makes sense for us to do now and which one makes more sense to do a little bit later.
Yep. And so basically, like, a lot of what I like of what is being built is that really the way you scale this is by replicating different teams that are specialized slightly different to the different types of. So at the very beginning, we know that we have developers who work on our APIs who are different to those who want a white label, mainly because of the types of services, the type of product that they want, and what we can offer, who in turn are different to enterprise customers, which may need a little bit other types of, like, everything from customer service that is different, and ticketing systems to smaller companies or in the SMB or just not as large. So what Maru has been putting together is a plan of how these pods get deployed over time. What are the metrics based on the numbers we already have? And that's where it becomes very important, because you kind of stack your learnings. We've already learned which things work, and we have metrics for different types of channels, for different types of customers. So now we can start stacking those metrics and seeing what happens if we have a team only dedicated to this. How much more do we need to do outbound calls or emails or whatever to actually feed a self-standing or a pod that does enterprise, or a pod that does a specific market segment? And so what we've now been, and that actually, as a startup, that all goes back into your projections for next year, and it goes back into how you're going to deliver on these things. And delivering on these things is basically what do we need on the customer success, as you were saying, and what do we need in our professional services team, and what do we need as a platform to deliver on this ever-growing number of deals.
And what do we need for marketing as well?
Yeah.
Understanding how many leads need to go into the funnel and
yeah. And actually, that's a good point. Not everyone goes into the pods. Something that has become increasingly clear is that we need a staff section of Suggestive, which is the staff basically in the sales team are generating like everything from product marketing to demand generation to managing the outbound funnels and LinkedIn, whatever it is. Each of those has either a person or a group or an external person helping us to generate those groups and leads.
And same with when we talk about process, each pod will have its own process as well, just because of the nature of the customer base in the market. And then on top of that, we have to come up with good templates for the proposal. So each team is going to be very specialized to handle that type of customer. And that's going to hopefully, right, increase our conversion rates because we're approaching it in the way that the customers expect and in the best experience that we can give them.
Any last things you want to say, like in terms of like, what are the things that normally don't work? You've been VP of sales several times, and which are like, and you've been in sales for a long time. So how do we? Which are the roadblocks, the things that don't work, and that your experience is helping and prevent, but that are generally some of the.
I just think that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, and it might be worthwhile to show our viewers the dashboard that you created, because I think it's.
I don't know if I can share it right here, but we will share it as an image, and so probably when we're talking about it, you may have already seen it.
Yeah, great. The magic of technology, isn't it great? But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing to me is that a lot of companies just kind of go out and try things, but they rely on their intuition, or they rely on just kind of some feel of whether things are working or not. And it's so often that you're surprised when you look at the data. You know, we especially when we focus on different messaging and try new experiments on what will work, we're very confident that some message will be, really well received, and then it just doesn't perform. So make the decisions based on the data rather than your own biases and misconceptions. That's probably my biggest key.
We were measuring before John arrived, and we were basically, that was exactly what we did. I sat down a couple of weekends, worked with Matt, and redesigning our website. We redesigned our price list. We defined a go-to-market. We thought we were very smart, and we kind of like changed everything around. And we went out to sell, and we got no one. We had like 30 people interested, or 30 companies. But then when it was time to close, our offering was off by far. And we just, and the website was not generating new leads. We had 0 new leads coming in. And it was amazing because you would think that me as a founder, and having worked in Suggestic all my life and interacted with customers, would know what they want. And so and I had one of our partners or investors who's actually a VP of marketing in startups, like go through the website with me, and we designed it, we set it up, we launched it, and it was a failure. So it was like, it was like the data was there. And 3 weeks into it, it was like I thought it was a marketing. I thought we tried different things, and it was like, let's just go back to the old website, which we have had for over a year. And the old website did not work. It actually did work. Mm-hmm. So with that, one last thing, because we actually have to go to a sales call right now. So let's.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm still learning the process here, and I will see over time what works and what doesn't work. But from my experience, it's also the quality of how you approach your customers. I think that matters for the conversion rate. I've been in a group where we had a lot of leads and very, very few that converted over. Whereas another group I worked on, we focused more on the process, and we had a lot less leads, but we had way more conversions and a higher close rate. So that's what I would love to bring to the table.
That is awesome. So thank you, everyone. This has been an awesome, I know that I have to say something cool at the end. I don't have it here with me, but let's just pretend I said something cool. We'll put the little... And thank you very much for being here with us, and see you soon in another episode of this Building Health Solutions.